Ladies and gentlemen, since the raid on Mar-a-Lago, the FBI and its leadership has received a lot of threats from very confrontational and violent like people. So I'm going to go ahead and play this audio so you can hear what they have been going through since the raid on Donald Trump's club, Mar-a-Lago, down there in Florida. It has not been good for them at all. Very confrontational, violent, unpredictable. You know what I mean, y'all. Let me go ahead and play this.
This news story was written by Perry Stein, Ellen Nakashima, Hannah Elam, and Josh Dawsey. As the FBI comes under threat, its leader tries to stay out of fray. FBI Director Christopher A. Wray confronts a rise in threats against the FBI stemming from the search for classified documents at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago. From the moment news broke of the FBI's search for classified documents at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club, the former president and many of his supporters declared open season on the Bureau. FBI agents who carried out the search were doxxed in posts on Trump's social media network. Violent rhetoric swirled online. One man attempted to breach an FBI field office in Ohio and, after a police chase and 6-hour standoff, was shot dead. A Pennsylvania man was arrested and charged with threatening to kill FBI agents. All the while, Trump and other high-profile conservatives piled on, declaring to millions of followers that the FBI was politically compromised and must be dismantled. Some of Trump's allies cried, "Defund the FBI," and worse. In the face of this vitriol, the FBI issued a joint intelligence bulletin warning of an increase in threats, quietly hardened its facilities, and scrubbed personal information from websites to protect personnel from possible danger. As he absorbed all this, FBI Director Christopher A. Wray stayed largely out of public view, in keeping with the norm for the nation's top law enforcement agency. Then, on Wednesday, Wray confided in a weekly video call with senior FBI officials that he was pissed about the attacks and threats of violence, according to one law enforcement official, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to share private discussions. That flash of anger was a rare hint at the private frustrations of a leader who has seemed determined to avoid the political scandals that dogged his far more publicity-friendly predecessor, James B. Comey. The past 2 weeks have presented Wray with one of his most significant leadership challenges in the 5 years since Trump nominated him to lead the FBI. Despite calls for a more forceful response, including from some former law enforcement officials, Wray has avoided jumping into the public fight over the Justice Department's investigation of Trump's handling of classified documents. Wray is no stranger to Trump's tirades, and his playbook has been to ride out controversies with a quiet professionalism. In the video call, Wray stuck to that approach. As I have said over and over and over again these last few years, our best response, and that's one that can never be questioned or torn apart or taken out of context, is to demonstrate our determination to doing our work the right way, Wray said at the virtual meeting, according to the law enforcement official. The FBI has not quantified how many threats it has received, but the Bureau and the Department of Homeland Security last Friday issued a joint intelligence bulletin to employees noting an increase since the August 8 search of Mar-a-Lago. The bulletin was obtained by the Washington Post. Officials said the Justice Department has scrambled to remove identifying information from websites and beef up security for personnel who are being targeted by Trump supporters, a now familiar playbook for federal agencies that land in the former president's sights. Each morning, Wray and dozens of the FBI's top officials gather in one of the most protected rooms at the Bureau's downtown Washington headquarters to discuss the successes of the previous days and the pressing threats of the upcoming one, said a senior FBI official who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the situation. In the past 10 days, threats against the FBI have been more frequently mentioned at the morning meetings, with leaders then determining which of these threats are credible and quickly dispatching extra resources to agents and field offices as necessary. When you look at the history of the FBI, we have always faced threats, the senior official said. But there is certainly an elevated level of threats and substantially increased rhetoric, and we are laser-focused on that in terms of protecting our workforce. Though Wray has been engaged behind the scenes, he has ceded the limelight to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who in a public statement last week defended the integrity of the Justice Department's investigation and of the people carrying it out. The men and women of the FBI and the Justice Department are dedicated, patriotic public servants, Garland said. Longtime department observers note that it's appropriate for the Attorney General, not the FBI Director, to take the lead on speaking out on politically charged issues. But some argue that the protocol wasn't designed for a scenario in which the Bureau is facing relentless attacks led by a former president whipping his followers into a dangerous fervor. Ray's dilemma is one every agency chief who gets the make a mob treatment confronts: fight back or stay silent for fear of escalation. I respect Chris for being properly circumspect, but there are also times when a leader, any leader, has to talk to his or her troops, and to the public, to knock down baseless and reckless accusations, said Chuck Rosenberg, who was a senior Justice Department official when Ray headed the department's criminal division, and was a senior aide to two prior FBI directors, Comey and Robert S. Mueller III. I think you can do so while being faithful to your obligation not to talk about ongoing investigations. Former FBI officials said Ray is probably more reluctant to speak out because of the intense scrutiny and backlash Comey faced when he broke with FBI tradition and, in the midst of the 2016 presidential election, publicly revealed details about the federal investigation into Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server while Secretary of State. Some critics say Comey's actions made the public perceive the FBI, which has long striven to be seen as independent, as politicized. This is a damned if you do, damned if you do not moment, said Frank Figliuzzi, a former FBI assistant director for counterintelligence. Anything that's done that is kind of out of the ordinary protocol for a criminal investigation would be viewed in this terrible environment we are in as this terrible political statement. It may serve to further aggravate and inspire these crazy people who are willing to risk their lives to attack the FBI. In a July 5, 2016, news conference, Comey announced he was recommending that charges not be brought against Clinton. He also criticized Clinton's handling of classified information as extremely careless. And he disclosed he had not informed the Justice Department leadership beforehand of what he planned to say. Then, in a surprising move 11 days before the November election, he notified Congress that discovery of new emails had led him to reopen the Clinton investigation. 2 days before the election, he announced the probe was closed. Trump narrowly defeated Clinton in one of the most contentious elections in modern history. The Justice Department Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, later issued a 568-page report on the events of 2016 that blasted Comey for departing so clearly and dramatically from FBI and department norms, and doing so in a way that undermined the perception of the FBI and Justice Department as fair administrators of justice. That kind of debacle is anathema to Ray, according to people who know him. Ray, whose low-key temperament is in many ways the opposite of Comey's, is seen as a calming presence in a turbulent period for the Bureau. Larry Thompson, a former Deputy Attorney General who was a mentor to Ray, described the FBI director as the kind of person who obviously will want to do the right thing, but he'll want to do it in the right way. But the Mar-a-Lago search has thrust Ray into an uncomfortable position, as the Bureau he leads finds itself in the political crosshairs. Trump has told advisors that in the nearly 2 years since leaving office, no issue had better galvanized Republican voters around him than the raid of his Florida home. He has taken note of how many Republican politicians issued statements criticizing the FBI, even from some he did not expect. Everyone is on our side, Trump told one advisor 2 days after the search. In another rant several days after the search, he described the FBI in profane terms, calling them F-curs who were out to get him, according to a person who heard his comments. The former president has grown somewhat paranoid since FBI agents were on his property, positing they might have left behind recording devices, a person who spoke to him said. After firing Comey 4 months into his presidency, Trump selected Ray, who had been a partner at King and Spalding and before that served in George W. Bush's Justice Department, in part on the recommendation of former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. But Trump came to believe the FBI was too intransigent and regularly pulled his advisors on whether to fire Ray. John F. Kelly, one of Trump's former White House chiefs of staff, said Trump repeatedly told him he wanted an FBI director who was loyal to Trump. I need someone who is loyal, Trump said, according to Kelly. Trump's animus toward the FBI started during the Russia probe led by Mueller as special counsel, Kelly said, but he grew angrier with Ray for not carrying out particular investigations, especially against Clinton, FBI figures, and other critics of his.
All right.